In my last video, you saw us struggling to catch trout because of that incredible west wind that had been blowing at 15 knots for a couple of days. But I left you with the hope that on day 2 it would be different. And in fact, the forecast for the winds held true, and we woke up in the morning of day 2 to hardly a breath of wind. So at nautical twilight, we headed out to the area where we had found quality trout on the day before. Oh, right there. Oh, God. Little one. That's probably 12-incher. Probably a keeper. It is a keeper. I didn't get the last fish on film, but we are having some great fishing this morning on Topwater. Exactly what we wanted to happen. We came out here. We aren't out at the end of the pass where all the other fishermen are. We've decided to come here where we could fish, just drift these rocks with Topwater. Incredible tide this morning, blasting through here. Incoming tide down by Lafourche. So, but we're at a great way to drift. It is a little crazy with the boat traffic, and there's not much better fishing than throwing topwaters along a line of rocks.
There's one.
Good one. It's quite hard.
Keeper, got him back. Good one? Oh yeah. Oh, he drilled it and he missed it. Look right there, he come back at it.
Nice. This is a nice fish too. Boom. Can't beat this. A line of rocks, no boats, and just drifting, and there's fish on it. I mean, I haven't had this for a while because so many of us have been fishing. So it's like at the long rocks, so many people are fishing, you can't drift the rocks right now. Whoa!
I seen him trying to get it. Boy, that water's right there, he hit it.
Why do they keep doing that?
They way out. They following it out because they following it out.
Until they see the boat, and then they
See that big turtle right there?
hit at it.
Looks like a sea turtle.
Where is it?
Big old head. He come up right there. Big old head. It's a nice fish there. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Got him hooked real well.
Oh, that's the biggest one yet there. Whew. Wow. Now that is a serious trout. Wow.
We're gonna turn her loose.
You want to weigh it?
You can. Probably 3.5 pounds, 3 pounds.
You see it?
No, it's on your side. 3.5 pounds.
3.5 pounds. Beautiful.
There's one.
Oh, what do you got there?
It's a trout.
Big boy.
Nice one. Got him side hooked. He ain't as big as that other one, I don't think, because he's silk sideways. keeper though.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. This guy gonna give us heck here. White
Yeah,
double D.
Subsurface when this top one blows out.
Yeah, so that's a subsurface. Not there yet. Oh, there we go. Burr.
There's one.
Gotta get two.
Pretty big.
Oh yeah. Beautiful trout there. Yeah, beautiful fish. Switch to the X-Wrap for a little more depth. And that's the ticket. The fish have moved since we've been out here. They've moved from top water down to subsurface. There's one. That's a decent one.
Huh?
That's a keeper there.
You want the spray?
Yeah, but not this second. Yeah.
I think he hit your line, didn't he?
I'll see what jig will do. See if they're on the bottom here. There we go.
Down one. Jig.
Jig. Maybe they're transitioning a little bit deeper now. There we go. Another one on the jig. By late morning, that breath of wind that we had seen first thing in the morning had turned into a pretty strong southwest wind, and it had collected some dirty water from along the coast, probably left over from all that west wind, and it was with the aid of the tide coming in, turned the water pretty dirty in Bell Pass. And that was our cue to start on part 2 of the plan, Barrier Island fishing.
He ain't hooked real good.
Wow, that's a nice fish. Whoa. Oh, beautiful. Really nice fish.
Shallow full. That's that bait zipping through.
Yeah, this is an example of what happens if you hang around too much with Mississippi people. They get you fishing hard baits out here in water that's supposed to be cork water. That's a double D. And we're just on a point. The water is a little grainy, but we're sitting on the point in the dirty water and casting into the clean water.
You get it.
Oh, I got my too.
The little one here though.
Mine is
Keeper.
too bad.
Coming off easy.
on the double D. Oh, I got hit right there.
I'm gonna say that right
There we go.
Come down.
Oh, this is a good one.
Y'all see
Holy
him come
crap. This is a good one. Oh yeah. Might be the biggest one.
See what them hard baits will do for you?
Yep.
That's a nice
Oh,
fish, pretty
nice
fish. You want the net? Or you gonna lift him? You gonna tank?
I guess I'll lift him up.
There you go. You can come back up and get it.
There's another nice fish on a twitch bait. In summertime, it's basically summer, in live shrimp and popping cork territory. This whole point is kind of grainy because it's picking up sediment, and they're still hitting the hard baits. That is a 2.5 pounder. And I'm not sure if you're aware of how these barrier islands are formed. You know, the river comes down, forms a delta, and the heavy particles, which are the sand, go out with the main channel. When they get at the mouth, they drop out because the velocity of the water slows. And so that begins to pile up, and you get those heavy sediments piling up there. The lighter sediments, like the clay and the smaller silt particles, tend to go out and form that kind of delta shape that we see. But on the end, this is where the sand builds up. Now, of course, over time, what happens is the river comes through, that the headland is formed by that sand that's developing. And so eventually that headland creates so much resistance to the flow of the river that upstream somewhere, the river changes course, goes to another location, reaching the Gulf at another location, and starts another delta. And the old delta becomes starved of sediment. The headland separates from the marsh, and because all of the clays and the light silts are slowly eroding away, or relatively quickly, depends on the situation, but they're gone, and eventually it's really just the heavy particles that are left, which is the sand. And then you see this kind of one barrier island. Well, then the erosion and storms continue to eat at that. Now you have multiple barrier islands that form out of what was that headland. And again, these are really just piles of sand laying on a mud and silt base. So it's not well grounded. And the longshore currents will move that sand. In fact, West Timbaleer Island in the last 100 years has moved 5 miles to the west just because of the currents on the Gulf. So you have these islands that are formed, simply the remains of the heavy particles that fell out of the river water. They're transient. They're wonderful places, but they don't last forever. And unfortunately, for humans that have built a lot of rigid infrastructure on the marsh further up in the delta, and we have to protect that. And that's New Orleans and a lot of oil infrastructure and the port of Fouchon. So now it's up to us to save the barrier islands, because that is one of the biggest protections that fragile marsh that we've built on. One of the biggest ways of protecting it is to break the swell, the wave energy from the Gulf by using barrier islands. And so there we are. We're stuck with rebuilding these barrier islands continuously. They're going to be in a continuous state of decline, and we're going to have to build them up, build them up. And so we might as well get used to seeing that kind of destruction. It's disheartening, but That's the reality of it. Good thing is, and what I would love to see is not just the restoration of the islands in an attempt to break the wind energy and save the infrastructure farther up in the delta, but to also create a greater habitat for the fish that we love to catch. And of course, it's also going to improve the commercial fisheries as well. So there is dollar value in recreational and commercial fishing that can result from having a better habitat on the barrier islands. There's one. There's another.
You got him?
Yep. Decent fish.
Huh?
Decent fish. So I got him
Got him
backwards.
foul hooked?
Maybe he's just wrapped around.
It's in his mouth now, yeah.
He was just wrapped backwards. It's gonna be a decent fish, man.
Keeper.
Probably a 15. Yes. Oh, I got one.
See another spoon on moving there? Good one?
Yep. Decent fish.
Go.
Or is it a catfish? Nope, that's a trout. Yep. They're back again.
I say a school swims through and they leave.
There's been a significant amount of barrier island restoration in Louisiana over the last even 20 years. And a lot of activities, and we saw some today. This is the Bell Pass Spit, the restoration work going on there. And you can see the sand they're putting on the beachfront. They're also bringing sediment for the back of the spit to create marsh. Excellent project, really happy to see that they're doing it. And in fact, if we look at the CPRA plan, the master plan for 2017, you can see that there are many projects planned for all the way along the coast. All these red dots are projects that are planned. Although, when you get on the east side of the river, you notice there are no dots at all. So there is not a plan to do any work in island restoration over there. Basically, the beloved Chandelier Islands are being left to nature, which is really sad in my opinion. We're on Timbalier Island, West Timbalier. Never been here. This looks kind of like what we saw at Chandelier Islands, giant sand flat. I don't know really how to fish this, but we were just gonna drift. We didn't bring our wading gear, so we're not wading. Oh, there's some folks over there wading. So there is a Timbalier Island, West Timbalier Island trout. Caught it. We're just drift fishing through the flat. Get a shallow running twitch bait, and not a big trout, but that's the first one for me. And Timbalier Island itself had a restoration project in 2004, and you can see they filled in this center area for $13.8 million in 2004. Of course, that was before Katrina. A lot of water has gone under the bridge since then. So if we go over to Google Earth, there's some pretty shocking images of what has happened to Timbalier Island. And of course, I'm referring to West Timbalier here. It's also known as West because there is an East Timbalier Island, which is even worse. In fact, just a couple weeks ago it was announced that they've basically given up on East Timbalier. It's a lost cause, and they're going to let it go, and it's going to flatten out, and all we're going to be left with are those hazardous rocks that are submerged under the water in the front on the shore side, probably a lot of exposed pipes, just a lot of nasty stuff. that place is going to be a disaster for mariners. But if we go to the timeline and go back in history and look at Timberlake Island, let's go before 2004. There was, right there is the restoration. You can see this is the restored area, and the island still extends over. So that was after the restoration occurred. But as we move forward, you can see this part is starting to break through the end of the island. This is the edge of what was restored. It's breaking through over here. Let's move forward some more. Now you can see that we've lost, this is still the restoration area, we've lost that whole side. It's basically come off and come forward a bit more. You can see how that's completely opened up. And if we go to today, to 2020, you can see that the restored area is already breaking through in a couple of spots. So that's not going to last very long either. Maybe just a few years and that'll be blown out. But the good news is there is another restoration plan in the works for Timberlake Island. So we hopefully can get some restoration back there. Hanging down.
Catfish. See how that sucker
Just what he say. There aren't as many catfish, and then boom, catfish.
See how them suckers come up and hit though?
Mm-hmm. Trout would get pushed out.
That's a trout.
There you go.
Ain't it?
That's a trout. All right, trout zone. Need pliers?
I got some right here in my pocket. Shit, he was probably a keeper.
What, you doing back?
Yeah, he was probably a keeper. I didn't even think about it.
There is something. That's a trout.
Good deal. Maybe they out further. As a keeper, look like. Damn, I should keep mine back.
Is it? No, it's a catfish.
Is it?
Yeah.
I just hung up top, didn't it?
Yeah.
I ain't never caught that many catfish on all.
Yeah, it's like it's different. You know, one of the big differences that I saw on West Timberlake, on the section that I visited, which was the eastern section, and more around the area where the restoration work had happened, but there's no submerged aquatic vegetation there. And when I look on Google Earth, you can typically see SUV on these barrier islands, and I don't see any. Unlike the Chandelier Islands, it doesn't seem to be any on Timberlake Island. So that's sad, because that SUV is one of the things that really sparks the habitat and the life, providing cover for the smaller creatures, which ultimately then are bait for speckled trout. And the speckled trout will actually hang around that SUV in the flats with the SUV, and they can hang there all day. I think what we saw at Timberlake Island was that the trout on that sand flat probably came and went quite frequently from there. They came to look for bait, and then they probably left again. We really didn't find many there, but we were there in the afternoon, probably the wrong time of the day. But I don't see what's there to hold the trout. It was just straight out plain sand. So it needs another restoration project. It would be great if a restoration project could include the regrowth of SUV. I know they've tried that with some success in other places. They've restored a lot in Tampa Bay. They've worked on it at the Chesapeake Bay area. They've looked at how to replant. That would be great if we could see something like that happen, where SUV could return to some of these barrier islands. This video is just another one in a series of barrier island fishing videos that I'm going to be putting out, because I'm going to be going to the barrier islands to fish a lot this summer, as much as I can. It's going to be kind of a focus for 2020 for me. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share and subscribe, and stay tuned for more barrier island fishing.